Welcome to episode 1 of The Art of Preaching. The Art of Preaching here is a series that I wanted to start detailing particular concepts, tools, and ideas relating to preaching, the style, the formatting, the presentation, things that I have observed and find useful in preaching for myself. And I want to try to articulate some of those to you and also to those maybe who aren't even pastors. One of the themes of this channel is a look behind the pulpit, right? So we want to give some insight into what's going on. What's going on when someone's writing a sermon? How are we going about doing it? What are we trying to communicate in so doing? And so the main focus of this series is tools that I think I can articulate very well, which is not so much a hermeneutical approach. I'm not going to necessarily dive into really extensive like hermeneutic tools, exegetical tools, although they do sort of fall under that category. More so, I want to look at the art of preaching itself in terms of clarity. These 3 points I have listed here: clarity, finding a style, and presentation. So my undergrad is communication. So that's the lens I want to look through this at in terms of how can a pastor take what he is writing, take what's inside of his brain, and present it clearly to an audience. So my first point is clarity. And what I want to season clarity with is a great deal of grace, okay? We want to look at what we write and how we're writing it and do it to the best of our ability, but realize that when we're writing this, ultimately the Holy Spirit is the one who penetrates the hearts and minds of the listeners, okay? That doesn't give us a pass to be lackadaisical and present a very poorly written and poorly presented sermon by any means. But it is a great deal of encouragement, and there's a stress that we do not need to feel in terms of, did I find the exact right words, right? Ultimately, the salvation of an individual, ultimately the understanding of an individual, giving them new ears to hear, new hearts to understand, is not our responsibility, ultimately, right? So we have that hope in our clarity. But in clarity, I want us to have that same heart, that same emphasis, that same goal in terms of, man, I want to write the best thing I possibly can. I want to make it as clear as possible. Now, in making it as clear as possible, we never want to sacrifice any truth. So it's a challenge between balancing clear, true, honest, what the text says from still making it clear and simple, right? Just because you make something clear and simple does not mean you have to compromise its theological rigor, okay? Right? So we can do both those things. So that's something I want to look at. The second thing I want to look at is finding a style, okay? All these tools are just that. They're tools. They're not meant to be the gold standard by which every single person will write a sermon. There's different ways of manuscripting. There's different ways of preaching. There's different ways of gesturing with your hands. There's different ways of using your voice. And ultimately, an individual has to find their own style, right? Ultimately, you need to know what is in your ability, right? Some people, and here's a good example, and I'll go over this. This might be a video unto itself, is manuscripting, full manuscript, versus just off-the-cuff exegesis, right? You can do both. And some people are better at one, and some people are better at the other. But ultimately, you want to take tools, in my mind, from both. You want to be able to have the, the engagement, the interaction, the eye contact. You want to be able to maybe even move around the stage and not be tied to a manuscript, and have more of the move of the Spirit kind of come upon your preaching in terms of, this off-the-cuff exegesis. Well, at the same time, you still want to have a lot of clarity and precision that a manuscript provides. So I have a style that I'll go over in another video, but ultimately we want to have both those things. We want to be able to pull from both those tools, but find the style, find the balance that works best for you. If you really, just cannot get away from a manuscript, and that's the only way you'll stay on task without chasing a rabbit, maybe you need to be more of a manuscript guy. If you really can know your contents and know your what you're going over, and maybe you just need a couple quotes, and that's all you really need up there, then and you get more out of kind of this just exegetical without a strict manuscript, then maybe you need to go that direction. But ultimately, you have to play with it, find what allows you, ultimately back to the main point, the most clarity. If going one way or another compromises on your clarity, if writing your manuscript in so many pages or a certain size font compromises your quality, maybe you need to up the size font you use. If you get lost in your manuscript, maybe you just need some bigger font, right? There's little things like that you can think about that all relate to clarity. You want to be able to, you don't want the manuscript or just your notes to hold you back. You don't want anything to interfere with the presentation of your material, okay? And so that brings me to my last point, ultimately, is the presentation. When it comes to presentation, it all comes out in the preparedness of the material. If you know something really well, you don't need to really, even if you have a full manuscript, if you know it really well, you don't really have to rely on that manuscript. If you've studied something extensively, if I asked you, hey, stand up and talk for 5 minutes about your favorite thing, whatever it is, if it, hopefully one of those favorite things is your spouse, right? You got to have that high on the list, but something you're just passionate about, something you're interested in, whether it be a sports team or a particular book or a particular movie or an actor. If I asked you to just talk about that person or that thing for 5 minutes, you wouldn't need any notes, right? And so the presentation of passion comes out of a well-studied, well thought out, the contents, and then that spring bubbles over into a passionate presentation that does not lack any clarity. So those are kind of those 3 points, and as I go through each video, I'm going to keep coming back to these 3 things. You're going to see little things I do, and I'm going, hey, I'm doing this for clarity. I'm doing this for presentation. This is how I write something. This is why I write it this way. So that's just a brief synopsis, right, an introduction, if you will, to the art of preaching.